Well, hey, welcome back to the Amanda Kaufman Show. And today I get to interview my new friend, Cathy Baillargeon. She is a former business consultant, and she's the founder and Chief Cathy Officer of Virtual Cathy, which is a US-based virtual agency that helps businesses and nonprofits and healthcare professionals stop carrying every single task, every single decision. And Cathy and I actually met in person here in the DFW area. And I was struck with her ease and her connection and her flow. And we just struck up such a great conversation. And I found out that she does specialize in this arena. And I was like, we need to talk because so many business owners right now are struggling. And one of my favorite things to talk about are strategies to scale. So, Cathy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So good. Okay, you have to help me with the Chief Cathy Officer of Virtual Cathy. What's the background on the title?
Well, because we're Virtual Cathy, because we do phone work, and sometimes it's just easier for my virtual assistants who are supporting business owners. Sometimes they go by Cathy, and so my whole team are my team of Cathys. And so I am the Chief Cathy Officer of them all. I am the Queen of Cathys.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so you're the Chief Cathy. That's such a clever innovation, actually, to have your team share a similar name. I would imagine that makes things a lot easier for the business owner and the team member.
Yes.
Very clever, very clever. Okay, so all right, here's what I'm seeing, and you tell me if you're seeing the same thing. A lot of business owners are busier than ever. They're trying to compete in a world where visibility is starting to get really tough. There's pressure to change your offerings to fit in an AI universe.
Yeah.
There's, the economy, there's the politics, there's like all the things. And I'm just seeing a lot of entrepreneurs feeling crushed under that weight. You seeing something like that?
Absolutely. I think especially with AI coming into the fold and, we all kind of have this idea of like, oh, AI should be handling everything for us and it should allow us more ability to, do things for ourselves as well as have this expectation where we can continue to grow and scale without really investing in staff. And it's really leading to so much burnout and continuous overwhelm, because it's just one more thing that they're adding to the plate. Not only are they providing the service that they're providing and the admin and the back office work and everything. Also, let's add in some AI and figure out how to, make the most of that. And my goodness, before that, like who has time for that? A lot of people do have time for that.
I mean, I feel like a lot of people, when they're starting their business, they didn't even have time to begin with. I was starting out. I also was a business consultant. I don't know if I shared that with you when we first connected and met. I saw you, so I know what it's like to have a pretty demanding, career and then a family and like all of these kinds of things. And then when you become an entrepreneur, it's like it's that plus, because you're doing so many different roles in order to make this dream happen. It's really easy to fall into that overwhelm trap without somebody telling you that you're like super behind on all of the technology and all of that good feeling rhetoric that we're seeing these days. So I'm of the opinion, Cathy, that the answer is not to race to zero in cost by replacing your entire business with AI. I do think AI adoption is very much a thing. And the way I see it is that to be competitive long term, you still have to have the appetite for risk, because the thing about AI that's really interesting is like everybody has access to it. They have the barrier to entry on that capability is super low. So instead of having a real advantage by eliminating your cost, it turns quickly into a disadvantage to think that way, because everybody has access to the same tools, which means the standard with which they can execute has elevated hugely. And so for you to compete, in my opinion, the answer is not eliminate, eliminate, eliminate. It is to add and to use team who are also empowered with those same tools to elevate the whole thing. Like, I'm curious, like for you, how are you approaching the AI conversation with your Cathys?
The everybody keeps asking, okay, virtual assisting, is it something that's going to be soon the thing of the past? Everybody's going to be replaced by AI. And the short answer so far is absolutely not. There's always going to be benefits of human interaction. Everybody, not everybody, but like so many people in business, they want to have like a concierge type service. They want to provide a good service to their clientele. And a lot of that has to do with that human interaction and being able to interact with their clients in a very human way. And so how we handle AI is taking that and adopting certain things that allow us to optimize the service that we're already providing to clients, which ultimately means we can do more with the time that they purchase, right? So we can do more. We can optimize. We can provide more of a service, get more tasks done, but it's still going to be done by a human.
I've been really working through a lot of this whole perception about the AI versus human conversation because I work with a lot of service-based entrepreneurs. I think I heard a stat recently that something like 68% of small businesses in the United States are services businesses, which I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to know. And so if your service is so impacted by artificial intelligence, I've really been asking the question and wanting to come up with much higher quality answers. But so then how come humans, right? How come? Like, what's the benefit to that apart from maybe taking like a principled stance on being anti-AI or anti-disruption or what have you? I'm like, no, but really, what is it a human can do that an AI just never could? And you know what my main answer is?
Hmm.
A human can care.
Yeah.
A human cares, right? So we have this beautiful ability to emotionally attach to work products, to our outcomes, to our goals, to the relationships of the people that we serve. Like it's attachment, and AI can't attach. All it can do is follow instructions. And so
Yes.
when you look at it that way, I think that there's still so much opportunity for whoever's listening to this to add so much value. But the thing that you have to really cultivate is empathy and caring. And what better way to
Yes.
do that than with having like team who's working together, pulling together and producing, like you said, so much more in the same amount of time, in the same amount of investment, like that becomes your competitive edge. So
Yeah.
Cathy, you've got a really cool take, I think, when it comes to providing, virtual assistant services about the readiness to do so. So I'm so curious, like when you see someone who is like, oh, man, I'm outgrowing, my own personal capacity to be able to execute these processes or these activities in my business, and I feel really behind or I feel really overwhelmed. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add another human to this. So like where do you see business owners having a good opportunity to perhaps prepare a little bit before they start
Yeah.
engaging someone?
Absolutely. Well, I think that what I have found in my 8 years of doing this is there's the people that will make the move and take action when they start thinking about, oh, you know what? I think I might be at that point where I need to hire somebody, and then they take action versus the person who has known for quite some time, who has gotten themselves completely overwhelmed, and they're so desperate for some type of support, but they have absolutely no bandwidth to bring somebody on. And then I think you had actually mentioned this. You had said this in a different podcast, the podcast that you were speaking with a ghostwriter, something about like people have a hard time planning or outlining a plan because they don't want to be disappointed when the plan doesn't work. Do you remember saying that?
That part, yes.
Yes.
Oh my God.
It
Yeah.
really resonated because that's really what we see also when people wait too long to hire somebody, and then they're in kind of this conundrum of, I am so overwhelmed with work, but I don't have any bandwidth to train somebody up. And to have this expectation where you think that you're going to be able to hire somebody and they're immediately going to take hours and hours off your plate without any kind of onboarding, without any kind of interaction with you to figure out what's the best way to delegate. It can be a little bit of an unrealistic expectation. And so when people start thinking, I always say the first sign and the second sign are very closely related. The first sign that you are ready to hire and should be moving in that direction is when you first start thinking about it versus when you first really desperately need it. And second,
See, I
when
wish
you
we
start
met like
seeing,
8 years ago, because I got to tell you, like, I was, yep, just in
yeah,
so much pain for my first few hires. I think that was ultimately the reason it didn't work out, is because, yeah, I think I had this expectation unfairly that they would care so much to make up for my lack of care, right? Like my lack of planning, my
mm,
lack of
mhm,
anticipation. And it led to a lot of frustration on my part because I was frustrated with myself for not being better prepared. I was frustrated with them because they couldn't read my mind. How rude. And it's just like not a good situation at all. So I like to think I've grown past that, but I have to tell you that from my past I definitely ran into that obstacle.
absolutely. And but business owners, they have accomplished so much even before they even get to that point, right? Maybe it's not necessarily shown in revenue or whatever that looks like, but there is a lot of accomplishment in getting a business started and getting it off the ground, that we have this tendency to think that we are natural born leaders and we should know how to delegate right off the bat. And that is so far from the truth for so many people. Like it is.
It's so true. It's so true. So I'm curious, like, about your perspective on delegation. Like, do you have a particular frame that you like to look at that through?
Yes. So in terms of delegation, first off, you kind of got to figure out, all right, what is the biggest excuse that's holding yourself back? What is the limiting belief that's really going to impact the working relationship that you have even after hiring somebody, right? I've heard it all. It's, oh, I could do it better. I could do it faster. Oh, I don't want to bother somebody with my petty little admin. If I've been doing it for so long, I should continue doing it because I can. All of these excuses are going to hold somebody back in really being able to delegate. And delegation is a skill set. It requires practice, and you might not, get it right the first time. But one of the hardest things to do would be to put all delegation decisions on the person that you hire. Like, oh, you've handled this before. What's the best way that I should delegate? No, this is your business. This is your baby. You should be able to say, how do you want to communicate? How do you want to touch base with the person that you hire for whatever kind of role that you hire for? What is a realistic expectation? You should be able to indicate as such, like what you need, and be able to communicate that so that working relationship is not doomed from the get-go.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Again, I wish that you and I met like 8 years ago because I do really love your
Right.
perspectives here. And just from my own personal experience, yep, exactly what you're saying. Like even the ownership of your own standards of production.
Yes.
Like when
Yes.
when I first started hiring, like I said, it was a mess. It was terrible. So I took a little break from that, regrouped, tried again. It went a lot better,
Mhm.
after, like you said, building some skills, doing some training, reading more, asking more questions. And one of the next things that I really struggled with was upholding the standard, like, and I really struggled with keeping it. I kept my frustration to myself. So then the person that was working for me would keep producing subpar outputs, and I would just fix it, or I would just say like, maybe we could adjust. And it took me like a minute to realize, you could fire the person and try again. And like that
Yes.
was so scary to me. I think I was more scared of firing than I was of hiring. And when
100%.
I realized, I was like, wait a second. Number one, work with somebody like Cathy so that you're going through a proper recruiting and selection process. And she's doing some of the legwork of vetting people, right? So you're not
Yes.
just
Yep.
talking all willy nilly to people internationally. Like that's crazy. The second thing was like working with somebody like Cathy to understand like what are some good reasonable expectations, because I think one of the things I was so scared of is like maybe I'm psychotic, right? Like maybe I have too crazy of these expectations, and through education it was like, well, actually your expectations are subpar. Like you could actually raise them. And I was like, oh, okay. And so it's like recalibrate, recalibrate, recalibrate. All of that to say, through the training, I did learn. I was like, oh, you can have like you can do all these interventions to protect yourself in the business, and you can have these expectations right up through the beginning of the process, that when people tell you like right at the beginning how much they care about getting it right, and you
Yeah.
see those misrepresentations that might have happened in the interview process, or even not even misrepresentations, maybe it's just like a chemistry thing, the
Mhm.
ability to break
Mhm.
up, I did learn how to fire. And oh my God, it ended up being so much better overall, because then I realized I was like, I'm not stuck with a decision. I don't have to do this, but I also don't like firing. So then it made me more picky about the hiring, which is again, not to plug Cathy for a third time, but seriously, working with someone who's an expert on this, when you're an entrepreneur who's being pulled 17 different directions, it can be absolutely game changing. I just want to say that.
Yeah. And then so many people go into this kind of working relationship or, looking to hire, get support, and they think that they need to have all the SOPs written in the world
Yeah.
and they have to have everything clean. It's kind of like, when you hire your first house cleaner and then you're cleaning your house before the house cleaner comes. It's like, this is redundant. And so if you don't have any SOPs, if you don't have any documentation processes, that's okay. The person that you hire should have the ability to do that for you. And the like kind of getting ready to create this work, if this is something that you don't feel like you can verbalize, to somebody well enough for them to understand, it literally, and I really try and make this as simple as possible for people, because again, they just think that they need to have everything documented to perfection. Take a free Loom account, record yourself actually doing what it is that you want to delegate. You don't have to say a thing. Just record your screen and what you're doing, and then hand it off to the person that you hire. And they should be able to take that and create a working document, a working SOP for you without you having to do that, because we did not get into business to write our dang SOPs, and we
Well,
don't have to spend
yeah. And
hundreds of
it's,
hours preparing to hire
yeah. And I
somebody.
used to be so scared of that one too, because I'm like, oh no, I'm
Yeah.
locked in, because like one of the things that can be super helpful as you're building a business is having the flexibility about those SOPs, So for an example, as you're developing your marketing message, your marketing strategy, like I honestly wish more entrepreneurs would iterate through those things and tweak
Mhm.
their processes. But like I said earlier about like AI can't care. It's not that it doesn't. It's like it literally actually cannot. And when you have someone on your team who's like, "Hey, I'm going to have you help me with marketing." It's like, great. They care about doing a good job. They care about growing and progressing as well. So, I'm
Absolutely.
super excited for what you're going to be doing. Cathy, actually, speaking of, what are you going to be doing over the next little while to help more people find a Cathy?
Gosh, well, I'm out there. I am on social media. I do podcasts, but ultimately it's continuing to grow my team as we continue to grow and take on more clientele of a business nature, nonprofit organizations, and yeah, it is such a privilege and an honor to be able to support small business owners where they're at, and that doesn't necessarily have to look like full-time or even part-time support. And I think that's one of the things that really holds people back in hiring support is like they think they need to have at least 20 plus hours worth of work a week. It's like, no, there's people out there that can support you even as little as
Well, and I would
10 hours a month.
argue that, like, yes, there's people that want that level of flexibility. They actually don't want to be working 20 hours plus a week.
That's correct.
They need
Yeah.
like that flexibility for that season that they're in their life. There's lots of people in that, right? And I would also suggest that the sooner you get started with delegation and building that skill and doing it in a slightly lower risk way of a few hours a week, it can actually be a pretty huge move for your future because at some point this thing's going to grow and you're going to want to have a larger team and you're going to want to have more people and all of that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So meeting yourself where you're at and starting to develop the skill as soon as possible, that makes really good sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Our biggest goal, which is, is allowing our clients to grow and scale with us and then part ways when it makes more sense to hire somebody full time in-house,
That's
whatever
okay.
that looks like for them. Like that, we want to be that stepping stone that, support until we need something more. And
That's cool.
yeah,
That's really
that's
cool. So, Cathy, I understand you do have a practical guide that you wanted to share with folks.
Yes, absolutely. Master your time. When people start thinking, oh man, I need support, they're sitting in front of their computer at 7 o'clock at night and they still have a couple hours of admin work left, and they're thinking, I shouldn't be doing this. This is not why I got into business. And they still kind of question like, but I'm not even really sure what to delegate first. This practical guide gives you some ideas on where you can start first. It could be things that you're doing right now or things that you have an idea to implement in the future. But this is something that kind of gives you an idea of how you can free up 10 to 15 hours a week to start.
What would you do, dear listener, with 10 to 15 hours every single week? That's a lot of hours. Like that adds up very, very quickly. I just did the math really quick in my head. 10 times 52. If every week of the year you were able to save that 10 hours, that is over 500 hours. And when you consider a full-time job, usually when I'm estimating a full-time equivalent, I would use 2,000 to 2,200, but 500 out of 2,000, that's like a quarter of a full-time job. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal to get that time back. So definitely, I'll make sure to have the link around this episode that you can download that. Cathy, thank you so much for having such a wonderful conversation about hiring Cathys and doing some delegation work. I really, really appreciated the conversation.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate you,
I
Amanda.
love it. I love it. And dear listener, if you have a friend who would really benefit from having more delegation in their life, make sure you grab a link to this episode, send it to 3 of your friends, and go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss another interview and another conversation about building a business you really love in the life that you really have. And by the way, if you would like to be featured on the show, here's how to do it. All right. We'll be back for another episode very soon. But until then, make sure you do what matters, and we'll see you next time. Hey, Amanda here, and I am looking for guests for this show. So I'm looking specifically for established entrepreneurs who've figured out a thing or two about how to make this business thing work in the context of a real life. So if you would love to sit down for an episode of the Amanda Kaufman Show and let me pick your brain in front of the people, then make sure you apply at clairevenue.com/the-podcast. Link is in the show notes. Let's get back to the show.